So basically, I was diagnosed in 2015. I was 52 years of age. The first one, it had metastasized and all that kind of stuff. So I had to have 4 months of chemotherapy, so infusions and all that kind of stuff. And then I had massive surgery. It was supposed to be 2 to 3 hours. It was 11 hours. So it was very extensive metastasize of cancer. And then another 4 months of chemotherapy. And then I was kind of, cancer free. And then 8 months later, so 26. So at that time, I was 50% chance of survival. And then 8 months later, my cancer came back. And so that's when my survival went down to 20% because they considered that that's aggressive. And we did the chemotherapy again. I think it was about 4 or 5 months, once every 3 weeks, 8 hours infusion and things like that. Went away again. And then I had, I guess probably 8 months later, came back again. And this time there was actually a clinical trial drug possibility. And so I did that. And olaparib, that was the drug. It's already approved for maintenance therapy, keeping your cancer away. Lynparza is another name. It's a PARP inhibitor. But at that time, they wanted to see, can it take your cancer away? And so it actually did. It took my cancer away, which was great. And then I was on that drug for about 4 years, 4.5 years. I kept my cancer away, which was amazing. So it really worked for me. And then unfortunately, I started losing weight. And that's what happened with some of these drugs. Your liver markers start to go up and things like that. It became too toxic. So I immediately had to go off of it. So last year I had to have a 6-month medical leave and just kind of get over all of this. And then I felt like it took about 3 months to get that drug out of my system. It was a heavy drug for sure. And 8 months later, my cancer is back. So this is years ago now. I worked in genetics and things like that even before I did my PhD and whatnot. And I had an aunt on one side had died of ovarian cancer, and an aunt on the other side had died of a breast and ovarian cancer. And I worked in genetics and things like that. And so I would ask the doctors every now and then, well, can I be tested? Shouldn't I be tested? Well, no, your mother is fine. She never had cancer and all those kind of things. You don't have a direct relative. And so I was never offered to have that. When I finally got diagnosed with cancer, it was through pain. I think with a lot of women, that's what it is. I had a lot of pain. And unfortunately, if you get caught at stage 1 or 2, you have a 90% chance of survival. But when you get caught at my stage where you're just having a lot of pain, now it goes down quite a lot. So I started having this pain and I went to my clinic to see my doctor. And unfortunately, every time I'd go, she just didn't happen to be there. And it was actually a male doctor. And he didn't diagnose me. A month later, went back again, didn't diagnose me. It happened like 3 times. Finally went to my physiotherapist because it's like, God, I'm just having a lot of pain and stuff like that. And my physiotherapist, he actually said, Rona, you're going from here, you're going to your doctor, and you're not leaving your doctor's office until they tell you what's wrong. I did that. Again, my doctor wasn't there, but this time it was a woman. And she immediately, just looking at my file, I'm 52, cancer in the family. She did an internal exam and that's it. The diagnosis, bang, sent to the hospital and the exams and all that kind of stuff. And then they, of course, did genetic testing at that time for the 8 top cancer ones that they do. What is it? TP53, BRCA1, 2, those one, they came up all negative. A researcher at the university knew I was a researcher and said, Rona, I look at another 20 genes. Would you let me look at some? And I said, for sure. And that's how I got diagnosed with RAD51C. So my point for that question is that, so it turns out my father has passed away, so I can say this, he had the mutation. It's his sister who died at 52 of ovarian cancer. I was 52 when I got it. So clearly that mutation, well, I know it's in the family for other reasons. So, my point is that even though it's not your mother, it could be your father. And that gene hasn't shown up in men. My father died at 92. He didn't have any cancer or anything. So that's my point for that. So first, I want to say that the team I have, my oncology team at the Chou-Florimar, are amazing. They're just like amazing. They are so supportive. So they just like so helped me get through this whole experience. And so I just want to say that. For me, and maybe because it's of my background, I mean, obviously I don't want a mutation and I don't want that in my family, but for me, it's preventative. So now for my family, they don't have to go through what I did. So for me, it was a relief. If we hadn't found anything, although there was something there, then my family, we couldn't have, my sister is okay with me saying this. She had the mutation. She was able to go and get her ovaries taken out. And so she won't have to go through what I went through. So for my family, we've all been, obviously it's hard, but it's been a really good thing because now it can be preventative for future generations. So overall, to be honest, that's been a really good thing. And for us, knowledge is power, and that helps you and things like that. It also helps, like for that one drug that really worked well for me. Well, I know where my mutation is. I know what the protein problem is. And so you can start to look at it that way. Oh, that drug is probably going to work really good on Rona because we know the problem she has. So from my side, it was a very positive thing.
For me, when I got into genetics, and in fact, Rona and I did our PhDs together in the same genetics lab. So, it's full circle and very close to home. But it's also very ironic because this is the paradigmatic emblem of what genetic testing can do. You find it early, you find targeted treatments like olaparib, and you can then assess the biological relatives and implement preventative treatments and surveillance. So it is the poster child of why we actually try to create these kinds of technologies, roll them out for the benefit of patients. But unfortunately, there are significant access issues with how many physicians and specialists we have to be able to deliver these kinds of tests. There are systemic barriers and systemic racism in our society in terms of who gets access to healthcare and therefore who gets access to these kinds of high-tech solutions that are not always available across the jurisdictions and different provinces and different regions and different marginalized populations. And then there's all the ways that someone might use a test to prevent access to an insurance or an employment, and all the things that create barriers for all of the reasons why we want to be providing access to patients and have the kind of preventative measures. So, those are the kinds of problems that I've been trying to solve in the research that I've been doing for the last 20 years, whether it's sort of try to provide some policy and legal solutions to genetic discrimination, or develop digital tools to scale beyond the limited healthcare providers we have to actually deliver genetic testing right to patients' homes and not make them come in and wait the years that they often have to wait in order to access a genetic test. And then now currently looking at the inequities in our healthcare system and trying to understand how we can mitigate those disparities and then further increase access to the marginalized and racialized populations that are experiencing those barriers.
Thank you so much. It's such important work. And I do want to ask Rona, especially given your shared history, how does it feel to know that your friend is working on something so important and impactful for individuals who may be at risk for ovarian and other cancers?
I mean, it makes a huge impact for me. It's a really hard thing to deal with mentally and physically. And when you know that there are people out there working for you and thinking, how can I alleviate some of the issues for that person? It's very, very meaningful. And when it's somebody so closely, like, and then you can talk with that person, it's even more meaningful and stuff like that. So I can't even begin to how much that means to me to have those kind of things. It makes a huge difference with the weight of what I have to go through.
Can I just spin off of that, Alicia? Because
Yeah.
to me, it's actually been very difficult because, Rona and I know each other for a different purpose, and our work and professional lives have never really intersected, really. We've always been personal friends and, you know, allies to get through our PhDs together and cheer each other on from the rest there going forward. But to then have our lives then and professional interests and personal interests collide in this way for me personally was very difficult.
Yeah.
Because it became, up until for the last 20 years, whether it was the Huntington's families or the cancer families that I've now transitioned to help, they would always ask me, like, why are you doing this? Are you from a Huntington's family? Are you from a cancer family? And it was a very strange mixed blessing in a way that I said no in each case. And then it was only recently when we chatted with those wonderful women, Alicia, with you, that I made the connection and I shared the connection that this world came full circle. And it was a collision course for me, emotionally and professionally. And it was frustrating because I felt like the theoretical things that I'm doing have practical application, and yet my friend is struggling.
Yeah.
And it is sort of the quintessential example of people falling through the cracks of the system that we've created.
Would you say that it's like increased your sense of urgency or feelings of responsibility for the work that you're doing?
Reprioritized my research efforts, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for, like, I have an incredible family, a lot of support. I have incredible friends like Yvonne, and I don't think I would be here. You get to a point, cancer is very, very hard, especially when you're told you have a year to live or those kind of things. It's one thing to be told you have 50% chance of survival in 5 years. Okay, that's not too bad. But when you get told, 11, now I'm at 11% or whatever, it becomes very challenging. But when you have this incredible support system who just want to be there for you, they just want to come and they just want to be there for you, which you would be there for them if it was the shoe was reversed, you know what I mean? And I've learned a lot. I've learned that, instead of, oh, don't ask, and just be at home and be alone and stuff like that. No, you got to ask them, because it's very painful for them too, as Yvonne alluded to a little bit. And they're going through a lot too. And they need to be with you and see you and help you and feel like they're helping you, which they are. And so that's just so critical. There's research too that proves that, people who do have that kind of support survive longer, and they do. And I really see that, because with the cancer, and you just get to the point where you're so tired, and you know what I mean, and that just gives you that extra, I'm going to push through it, I'm going to do this, and then you get through, and then look, I had 4.5 years no cancer. It was amazing, right? And let's hope that this next round is going to be the same thing, you know what I mean? So yeah, can't say enough how much that is important.
Yeah, it's this duality between what you are learning theoretically and how it's, unfolding in a real time, in real world experience. And just, we always talk about how, epidemiologically, you can't take a population statistic and apply it to an individual. But, all I do is I've got numbers running around in my head and spinning and spinning. And every time I can't help but put away the stuff that I do know and then become just a support system and just a friend. And then, to the point that Rona's making, like it does affect us, and it's almost like an occupational hazard, to be quite honest, because you know too much of all the angles.
I just found, like, so people bring up this battle with cancer, or no, they lost their battle to cancer, or they won their battle to cancer. And a lot of people I talk with kind of don't like that word so much, but because to me, battle implies winners and losers, and it's a journey, and nobody lost. That's awful to even think that about a person, because they died, or death is failure, or any of that kind of stuff. It's a journey. And so I just think there could be some better words. It's one thing to be a cancer survivor. I'm not even sure about that word, but definitely. But this battle and winners and losers, I just don't think it's the right way to look at that. It's a journey we have to go through. All of us have to go through journeys, and we have struggles and things like that. So me personally, I just find that I'm not sure that those are the right words that are helpful.
And to just extend this from the preventative angle, right? So if now we're able to equip and empower relatives with the knowledge that they carry these mutations, so their journey, or otherwise known as battle, will start so much earlier in their lives. And are we expecting them to be fighting and be in that headspace and emotional energy space of this fight for even longer of decades that we're extending? So on the one hand, we're saying we perceive this as both genetic testing empowering family members to take preventative action, but that comes with a burden if we're going to then expect them to be battling for decades longer, as opposed to talking about this as a journey, or just sort of these new phases of reality of this oscillation between health and illness that is increasingly a blurry line for many, many disorders, not just cancer and ovarian cancer. So I think that society, the way that we support and have a positive and supportive orientation towards these that very porous line between disease and health, is going to also then and hopefully create the support structures that all of us are going to need as we start to oscillate between those cycles of health and illness. So that battle framework is going to just be exhausting for a lot of us for a long time.
So obviously it's really difficult. You learn a lot of really hard, it's very painful in some parts. I have a daughter and she's been an amazing support for me. But obviously it's really painful that this is so hard on her. But on the other hand, I've learned so much, because cancer makes you see life in a very certain way. If you're going to die, like, you look at life in a very different way. And so I'm very thankful for that. I saw that with my brother. My brother died young, and he brought up that, he was very thankful, even though he was dying, he was very thankful for what it had given him in how he looked at life. And it's true, it really, really does. And so that's been an amazing part of this journey. As hard as it is, you really live life very much, I don't know if I want to say on the edge, or in a very deep way, and your relationships are very deep. And with my daughter, it can obviously be really hard, or my sister, but at the same time it's really deep, so it's really meaningful. And with Yvonne and my close friends, so I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but it is something that's been very powerful for me. And I just really try to look at that and look at life in a very, it's an incredible life, and just try to take from that, instead of, there's a lot of hard parts and you need something to grab onto. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly what you've been speaking of. I mean, I think that you have to live for the moment, and also just always have a good handle on the priorities and the choices you're making. And I've always lived with a rule of thumb of, what will I regret the most if time runs out? It's I guess it's a half empty kind of approach, but I see that as just a call to action to always just try to prioritize the things that matter. But at the same time, we also have to realize that we have so much to also do in that time. So we have to just be mindful of just being good to ourselves, and holding all of those dear people in our lives, like Rona, very tight.
So one, if you don't mind, Yvonne, I'll start. One thing I want to give to them is hope. Like, I went down to 20% and 11%, things like that. But then that drug came along. All of a sudden I had 4.5 years. Now I've lived another 4.5 years. They probably have another cancer drug out there, so those researchers are making incredible strides. So it's to have hope, and it's hard. You're going through chemo and you feel like crap, and you know what I mean? But it's to have hope, and that, you just got to get through that. And do that block. I could only walk one block in the beginning. You do that. Next day I was a block and a half. You just gotta try to keep having hope. When I look at those researchers, when I look at those people who run for cancer and raise money and all that kind of thing, I'm so thankful to them for what they've given me, like that cancer drug that came along. It's because there was more research money, and so they could do that. And there's even more to it than that, actually, because I was able to go back to work for 4 years. Well, I'm a neuroscientist. I work in neurodegenerative diseases. So I advanced my research for those guys. So, it's not just helping people with cancer and my family, but also even more, if you know what I mean. So I think it's just, and seeing that and knowing that there's people out there, they don't even know me, and they're running for cancer to raise money or whatever it is. That there is that support. Maybe you don't have a good family. Okay, maybe you have good friends and you talk to those friends and you get help from them. Ask them for help. They want to give it to you. And you would do the same. And you're going to get through it better if you do that with them. Make it a journey with them instead of trying to keep it apart. Whether it's friends or support staff or family, whoever it is. So yeah, that's kind of a message I would try to give them.
Field. I think that the meaningful and true efforts to work with patients and around their priorities and structure our trials and our research objectives and where we funnel our money in concert with patient priorities and what families need is a very exciting trajectory for further developing the supports needed for cancer patients and their families, and also all of the ways that we're going to be advancing all the technologies and tests that we're going to be able to, hopefully, fingers crossed with our trial, Alicia, develop to find new ways to catch and detect ovarian cancer early, where as you say, there are no effective screening modalities right now. And the treatments are going to get even more tailored and more personalized with various genomic solutions and multi-omic solutions that we have. So I think the future is bright, and I think that we're moving in the right direction. So that hopeful message and that togetherness is really quite resonating with what I see in research as well.
And I would just raise one other point, and this is through talking with Yvonne about heritability cancer in British Columbia. There's this amazing program because, well, I'm a researcher, but I'm a mother. And of course, I want to give my family all the information they need to get the support. And that's a lot of work. I'm ill and all that kind of stuff. And so to know that there's a group there that would help my family, that would give them counseling if they need it. Do you want to be tested or not? Or all that information, there's places they can go for that. And from my side, that's amazing because it impacts my whole family, obviously, and the mutation and, and things like that. So that's like huge for me, from my side and my family we have a genetic mutation in our family for this. That's massive.
Yeah, I reflect on Rona's story, and living through it with her, I have never had the bird's eye view of piecing it together from more of an overview like that. And to me, what struck me, and what I'm not personally working on, but I know that we and Ovarian Cancer Canada and others can maybe contribute to, is the sense of agency that patients need to have to constantly try to get access and get the diagnosis, get access to the tests that are required, and if that's a genetic test for their family members, what have you. But the point is that we could be working from the system as much as we can, and I'm trying to improve that access. But it's sad that we also have to lean on the patients and their families and their resource networks to help them get access to that first diagnosis, and then help them navigate the system of, then once you got the diagnosis or are a mutation carrier, what's the, of the plethora of things that need to be done, how do we structure that? And it's falling through the cracks of the system and finding better ways to support patients to advocate for themselves so that they can identify that diagnosis or access to the test, and then having some more of a coordinated system of care that help patients navigate through what is otherwise a fragmented system, is something that I would strongly echo through the top of the mountains about how we need to continuously support, both from the prevention, but also from managing all of the various components of.
And so this is something that we all feel very strongly about throughout the continuum, prevention, early detection, treatment, diagnosis, supportive care, end of life care. the whole idea that we have to go from the bottom up and the top down in terms of making it helping patients self-advocate by providing them the right tools and information, but also ensuring that when they do advocate for themselves, that the system is there to actually care for them when they get there. Because getting them to self-advocate and then having the system be a complete mess is not the way to go.
Yeah, exactly.
But I must say, you know, I love this interaction. Like we did that in the Huntingtons when we were doing our PhDs together with the Huntington families, and they were super supportive, those families, and they would come in and we'd have discussions, and we'd learn so much as researchers by talking to the patients and their families. And so I do feel some of this is really important, because I'm going to bring up things that not necessarily the researcher might think about, or you know what I mean? So these are super important kind of discussions also to have.
Yeah, it only enhances the quality and importance and relevance of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me and for sharing all this really important information, and Yvonne for all the work that you do and continue to do. So thank you.
And you had asked about a picture, so I'm trying to find that picture.
Oh,
from
yeah.
the day, eh, Yvonne?
Nice. I need to screen it before we share.
Yeah. I will let you screen it. I could